Hello and welcome to our weekly livecast. And I say our today for real because it's me, Jamie of Stonemaier Games, and today Joe of Stonemaier Games is also joining us for the first time. First time live, yeah?
First time.
Yeah. Many of you, if you're watching this, you may have interacted with Joe in some format on Board Game Geek on Facebook, but maybe you haven't seen him on video or seen him live. We even did a video last year of your top 10 favorite games.
Yes.
But I did it. I talked about it, and you just gave me what to talk about, right? Yeah. So, Joe, why are you joining us today for the first time?
Because I would like to be a part of this video, at least once. I happen to be moving here pretty soon, so I won't get a chance to be on video very much with Jamie in the same room. And I really appreciate this opportunity that all of you are giving us.
Yeah. So if any of you have questions for Joe today, Joe is always available to answer questions online, but live on video, this is your chance to ask him anything you want. I will relay the questions to Joe because he's not used to watching the comments and watching himself on the screen at the same time. But yeah, feel free to ask us anything. Obviously, the one thing that we don't answer are spoiler questions about things coming up. But we have actually now spoiled everything, except for maybe the price, of Rolling Realms. I've been revealing that over the last 2 weeks. Joe, have you seen any of the media that's come out about it recently?
Yeah, I just watched Tim Chuan's video. It was real nice.
Yeah.
The Watch It Played is super good.
And there were 2 playthroughs yesterday. The Lobby of Hobbies did a playthrough, and Gloryhound did a playthrough on the Game Boy Geeks channel last night. Mm-hmm. I was able to tune in for a little bit more of that. I wasn't available for Lobby of Hobbies. But I love my favorite thing I think about all these playthroughs, because I think some people might watch it right now and be like, oh, I can't play along right now. But with Rolling Realms, you can tune into these videos in the future and still play along against these people, because you don't have to be there live for it. So that's a cool aspect about it. Maybe even Joe, after Joe moves, we'll get him on a playthrough, a live play sometime.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Realms. Yeah. So let's see if there's any questions for Joe so far. So Chad asked, what was your gateway game? What got you into the hobby?
It was Pandemic. My girlfriend and I, Lindsay, played Pandemic, and we just played it a lot. And we still love Pandemic. We play the Pandemic survival tournaments and all the legacy games. Super fun. We still really enjoy it.
So I know you play tested Season 0.
Yeah, we play tested Season 0, which is a cool experience to then play the real game. We played a pretty final version. It didn't change very much. It was a lot of fun.
Did you end up playing all the way through the campaign as a prototype and in the final version?
Yep.
You did? Awesome. Yep. Awesome. Cool. Do you have any idea what's next for Pandemic? Are they still making new stuff? Or I know they're done with Legacy.
There's a Warcraft one coming out.
Oh, that's right.
I think.
Yeah. Will you play that?
I will play it, even though I'm not a big Warcraft fan. Yeah.
Cool.
We kind of have to.
You kind of have to, yeah. Tony says, what was the first Stonemaier game you ever played?
That was actually the next gateway game for us. We went from Pandemic to Viticulture, and it's still one of our favorite games. We played Viticulture base game more times than I could count, and then we added Tuscany and just kept going strong with it. Probably played it over 100 times.
That's awesome. Yeah. 100 times. That's a lot of plays of Viticulture. Yeah. And Joe, also, one of the things that Joe does at Stonemaier is whenever a digital developer, so we don't do anything digital in-house, we license our properties to other digital developers. And whenever a digital developer has worked on a game for a little while, they send it to Joe, and Joe, I don't know, tell us just a little bit about your involvement in that digital process.
Yeah, so they'll just keep me updated with updates. Like when they're in alpha, I'll try it out a little bit, poke at it, just sort of give a little bit of feedback. And then when it gets into beta, every once in a while we try to gather in some of our own fans to try it out that we know are big fans of that particular game, and give them a little feedback. And it's a lot of fun to see the background of how all of that gets to be a finished product.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that Joe has been willing to do that. I knew, so Joe has worked for Stonemaier Games full-time for a little over a year and a half now.
Yeah.
And one of the things I realized was kind of a gap in Stonemaier Games leading up to that is that we had these digital developers making out games for digital versions of our games, like Scythe. And for some reason, I am not compelled. I'm compelled to play the final version, but I don't want to be the playtester, because I've played these games so many times by that point in the playtesting stages. So I'm really grateful that you are okay with doing that from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kevin Kevin has a nice compliment, I think, for you. He says, I was playing my new game of Between Two Cities and noticed some of the tiles were misprinted. My friends were concerned, and I said, no worries, I will fill out the form and Joe will respond. And that was exactly the experience. Thanks for being so helpful and on top of things, Joe.
Excellent.
Yeah, Joe is the main hub for our replacement parts in the U.S. Although with him moving, he's now you'll still have contact with you a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But Joe won't be physically mailing out many of those things, but he'll still be there to help.
And I'll really miss that. I love sending parts to everyone who needs it, and making people happy and completing everyone's games. It was a really satisfying part of my job. But I have plenty to do, so it'll work out.
So for those of you who are joining us a few minutes into this live video, as usual, I'm Jamie. This is Joe, our Director of Communications here at Stonemaier Games. Joe is joining us for the first time on a live stream today. So feel free to ask Joe anything about anything you want. And there's kind of a random question here from George. What sports are you into, Joe?
Rock climbing, actually. That's pretty much it. That's all I do. I rock climb and I play board games. I'm pretty serious about rock climbing. I do it a lot. It's a lot of fun. And where we're moving to Reno, which is another thing I wanted to bring up with you, actually. Reno has a lot of good rock climbing around it. And if anyone lives around Reno, I'd love to make some friends. So just send me some messages later. And we'd love to see you in a couple months when we're there. Yeah,
that's very kind of you to invite people to participate in your two main hobbies. Mm-hmm. Joe is a very good board gamer, but he is an exceptional rock climber. I got into that a little bit. It's 2 years ago now, I think. Yeah, 2 years ago, where Joe was kind of openly inviting anyone at game night to come join him for some rock climbing sessions, and it was incredible to watch Joe. It's still incredible to watch what Joe can do on there, and I'd never even got close to your level, but it was fun, like leveling up a little bit and learning from the way you approach routes. It's like a mini game a little bit every time you approach a route. Yeah, it's incredible. What's your highest 13? Have you done some 13s?
I've climbed a 513A,
yeah.
But if anyone really knows rock climbing, I can usually on site 512A.
512A,
which
yeah. Awesome. Lise has a very odd question. Do you sing? She says you have a nice voice. Do you sing, Joe?
No, I don't.
Do you have any? Were you into music at all as a youngster? Did you play any instruments?
I played clarinet in band in junior high, and I was very glad to stop.
Tony has a question for me. I know you like alternate reality stories and Marvel. Are you loving What If? Actually, Joe's a big Marvel fan too. I told Joe last week I watched the first episode. Did you watch it? You did watch it, yeah. And I've heard that this week's episode is Black Panther, and maybe the last thing that the actor who played Black Panther recorded. So I'm feeling it's going to be a little bit of an emotional lunch today when I watch that What If. But I'm looking forward to watching it.
Me too. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Things so recently, Joe's been busy, I think, preparing for this move. I've played a lot of games of My City recently, and I played Spirit Island at game night last week. Posted about that on Instagram, and Spirit Island is incredibly popular. Like, people were so excited just to see the game on the table. Have you gotten? I know you've been so busy, but have you played anything recently?
I played Iberian Gauge last.
That's right.
That was a lot of fun, and it's not, stock games aren't my typical thing, but it was really fun to play it. Actually, Jamie was in there with just this group of people. We had so much fun playing it.
Yeah.
And then we actually play tested a Wingspan recently.
Yeah, a thing for Wingspan. A thing. Yeah. It was actually helpful too to get it to the table because we were essentially play testing the nesting box trays while we played, and we discovered a little odd thing with some of the trays I didn't anticipate, where we made some of the wells for the food really, really deep in these trays for the nesting box, and they're so deep that you can't actually see what's inside each of the wells. So I'm actually experimenting with a clear version of it and experimenting with making 3 of them instead of 2, so it's not as deep. So we'll hopefully, I wouldn't have thought that would be a problem. I thought, deeper is just better, but couldn't see it from across the table. It was in there. It was interesting. Chris says, how are the cats? Chris is always happy to ask about my cats. My cats are doing well, but Joe also has some cats. How are your cats doing?
Pooh and Fonz are doing great. Yes, yeah. We recently just washed their beds, and so they're loving laying in it. That's what they do. That's what cats do.
They're making up for all the hair you removed from the beds. Ben says, can we possibly put a copy of Joe, like a human copy of Joe, in every copy of Wingspan for rules clarifications? He is essentially complimenting you for your help on the Wingspan page.
Yeah, that would be pretty difficult, but we'll work on it in the background here.
Yeah, we'll get R&D on that right away. Chad says, where are you moving? Joe mentioned this a few minutes ago. But
To Reno, Reno, Nevada.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Tim says, hi from Scotland. Tim is the one working on the digital implementation of Tapestry, and thanks Joe here for all the help. You have many interactions with Tim at this point.
Yeah, and we talk on Discord a lot too, so that's great.
Cool. Tim, I think, has a question for both of us maybe. Would you be interested in seeing your various artists doing promos for games they weren't originally a part of? Jakob could do a darker version of Wingspan, or Mr. Cuddington with Euphoria. Just some different takes would be neat. There is one example of that. The artist of Tapestry, Andrew Bosley, he is a big fan of Scythe, and so he made a Scythe poster. Have you seen the Scythe poster that he did?
It's super cool.
Yeah, it's really, really nice. I think BGG is their poster series is great for what you're saying here, Tim. I think another artist that we have no connection to did the Wingspan poster. Do you remember who did that one? Do you have any of those posters?
I do not know.
Yeah, my walls are full of things, so I don't have room for them. But I love what Andrew did with that poster. And Tim, it would be cool to see Jakob do something for Wingspan or like a lighter game. Just I don't know if a promo, but I like the poster idea a lot. Big Dan has a question about LGBTQ. He says, what can be done to make more games LGBTQ plus inclusive? I find so many games have heteronormative relationships and gender-specific pronouns. Is this something Stonemaier are looking to improve in their games? I have an answer for this to throw out there. Big Dan, it's a great question. I love that question. It is something that we think about a lot in terms of inclusivity. Joe, does anything come to your mind when you think about that?
No, I think your answer is going to be great. I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, so this is just one example of something that I realized that we didn't do well in the past, and we still have a long way to go, but something that we're trying to improve, which is in the original viticulture, we only had mamas and papas. We had blue cards and pink cards. Blue cards were papas, pink cards were mamas. I think subconsciously assigned those colors. I wasn't really thinking about how probably shouldn't have just assigned pink blindly to women and blue blindly to men. But they only created heteronormative pairings of women and men. And so for years this bothered me, but I couldn't figure out a way around it. But the one thing that I've revealed about the new viticulture expansion is that we are releasing pink papa cards and blue mama cards. So now, from now on in viticulture, you can, or hopefully you will shuffle together all the blue cards and shuffle together all the pink cards. And instead of combining a mama and a papa, you will combine a blue card and a pink card and end up with whatever pairing. So you might have a man-woman pairing. You might also have a woman-woman pairing or a man-man pairing. So Big Dan, I know that's a very small thing. That's one game in the broader industry, but from my perspective, it's me saying this is something that I don't like that we did in the past that may have caused harm to people, and I don't like that. And we hopefully found a way to fix it both mechanically and thematically. That's one example that comes to mind in a much bigger issue that can be addressed, I think, by all of us as we move forward. That was the example that I had. Do you have anything that you want to add to that?
No, yeah, that's great.
Yeah. But I love that you asked that, Dan. That's a fantastic question to ask. Chad says, what game, this is a question for Joe, what game do you dominate? What game are you confident that you...
I do not dominate at any game. I am not necessarily very good at games, but I really enjoy playing board games. We did, Lindsay and I, as a team, get to the semifinals of Pandemic Survival, which was fun, and then we swiftly got crushed in that. So, I can't even brag about that very much. So, viticulture is another one that I know pretty well, especially with Tuscany.
For Pandemic Survival, I think maybe not everyone knows this, but what I learned from you a little bit is that the setup is like the same for everybody. How does that work with Pandemic?
So everyone is essentially playing the same infection deck and the same player deck, and so it's stacked the same way, and everyone has the same reveals every turn, and you are dealing with the same variables that everyone else is. It's just how you deal with them, and whoever survives the longest or beats it the quickest wins.
And so is it only in setup? Like after you start actually shuffling, is that not random too, or is that still?
Oh, the shuffle happens on the infection deck, and they have one infection deck. So
Okay.
that is the
Okay.
only mid-game randomizer, and that happens the same for everyone.
Interesting. That's really cool. Well done getting to the semifinals.
Yeah,
That's
me
impressive. Tim also wants to compliment Joe on his awesome customer service. Eric says, Joe, how have your gaming interests changed once you began working behind the scenes and being exposed to the development process of board games? Have your gaming interests changed?
I don't know if they've changed. I talked to a friend who says that he doesn't want to be involved in beta testing, in prototyping, just because he likes to deal with the finished product. And I like both, and it really takes maybe a specific type of person to really enjoy a game before it's ready and when it's ready. It's all fun, and I don't think it's really changed too much. This year's been weird because of the pandemic. I haven't played a lot of games, so I can't really say if it's just because of the pandemic or my job focusing on games. We'll see as the time goes on.
So one thing I noticed a little bit for myself is that I think before I got into the hobby as a publisher, if a game had like a damaged card or the box got damaged, that maybe hurt me a little bit more. Whereas now I just see everything as cardboard that can be replaced or not replaced. Like, and it's just cardboard, beautiful cardboard sometimes, but just cardboard. Since you deal with replacement parts all the time,
Yeah.
has that changed at all?
There is a part of the replacement parts job that I like to think of myself when I still did replacement parts as the protector of the uniqueness of each piece. Like if someone asked for a cube and wingspan, I could send them 16, and then they wouldn't think they were special, even though we have 16 to send. So we send them that one. It has changed a little bit for me. Now I feel like I have an endless supply of Stonemaier parts, so
Right.
maybe they're not as special. But that doesn't change the game. It doesn't change my enjoyment of the game.
Yeah. Alex from Board Game Co. is here. Hey, Alex, thanks for joining in. He says, did you see that recent rock climbing game on Kickstarter?
Yeah.
You like that?
Yeah.
First Ascent?
First Ascent. I actually play tested it a couple times with them.
Cool.
They're super nice people, and they're real climbers, which is really what got me excited about it too. There was one small suggestion I gave them in playtest. They said got good feedback and should be in the final game, but we'll see. So we'll see.
Cool. I'm excited about that one too. Even just mechanically, I thought it looked really, really solid, and I love the implementation of the theme, the different routes. Yeah, I'm excited about that one. Lee says, do you know if all the signed cards are finished now? She says she received a scythe box recently without a card. I guess the promotion is over now. Well, I'll clarify something, Lee. I don't know if this is exactly what you're asking, but on our website, on our web store, we have signed cards, or we had them. I don't know if they're all in stock right now, but you had to add it to your order to get one. So I don't know if you ordered a copy of Scythe and thought it was just automatically going to come with it. It wasn't. You had to manually add it onto your order. So if you did manually add it onto your order and it didn't show up, let us know, because it should have showed up.
Yeah, it should have. Send me an email if you added it to your order. We'll work it out.
Yeah. And if you have your order number handy, that's great. If not, we can Joe can look it up from your email address.
Yeah.
Let's see. Lee says, how did you both meet? How did we meet, Joe?
It was a design day, game day. Lindsay and I signed up for design day, and then there was a game day before that, and everyone signed up for different game days. We went to Jamie's, and it was Lindsay who convinced me to go. I was like, what would Jamie want to do with us?
I wanted to play games.
Right, I guess that makes sense. And Lindsay said, no, let's go. We'll meet great people, and we did. And I don't know. It blossomed from there.
And the thing I remember about it, so for context, if those of you who don't know, Design Day is an annual event that we run where people come and playtest their games. It's kind of like a mini one-day convention. And the day before it, at least before the pandemic, I hosted a smaller game day mostly for people who came in from out of town, but there was room for people like Joe and Lindsay who were in town. And the thing I remember about that game day is that near the end of the day, Joe was filling the dishwasher with just dirty dishes that had happened over the course of the day. And I was like, I like that guy. Like, he could just be socializing right now, but instead he is helping me clean up without me having to ask. And that was actually, I remember that when I thought about starting to hire you, that you were doing something without asking me if something needed to be done. You recognized that there was a need and you just took care of it. That, I think, is a wonderful attribute to have in a friend, but also a coworker. That's what I remember most about the day. I don't remember what we played, but I remember you behind the dishwasher.
I'm glad you remember that well, because later I thought, what if he keeps clean dishes in the dishwasher, and I just put dirty dishes in there? But it worked out.
Yeah. Let's see. Jazz is also here from the Lobby of Hobbies. I mentioned earlier, Jazz, thank you for doing that playthrough yesterday. I'm sorry I wasn't able to join in a little bit more. That was a Rolling Realms playthrough. We're done revealing everything. The reviews will start to go live for Rolling Realms on Friday this week. If those of you are interested in hearing opinions from people about what they think about our new game. Alex says he saw my post about My City. He says we're about 14 plays in so far. One of the few campaigns we'll finish this year. And yeah, we'll definitely, Megan and I are definitely on pace to finish in a couple of days. I think we have 4 episodes left out of the 24. This is a game that you have but haven't played yet, right?
Yep.
My City?
Yep.
Yeah.
We own it and we're just so busy moving right now. So
yeah. It is super fast though. If any of you have played Karuba, it's similar to Karuba in that everyone is placing the same tile, but they're determining where to place it, and so it's all simultaneous, all in real time. A game really does take 15 minutes. Yeah, we're having a blast with it. Megan is also crushing me at it, but I'm still having fun. Nate says, you're going to love Reno. I moved to Minnesota 14 years ago, but have always come back to visit family. Best of luck, Joe. They have a wonderful game store called The Glass Die.
Oh, I love The Glass Die. I almost wore the Glass Die t-shirt.
Okay.
But I appreciate it, Nate.
Nice. Christy says, what's your, she's asking me, but I'll ask Joe as well. What's your average score in Tapestry?
I could look on board game stats right now, but it's very low. I'm famously bad at Tapestry, but it's still fun.
I would say I'm right around there too, Christy. I know as the designer I should be really good at it, but I fall more. Actually, I'm a mechanics first player usually, but I fall a little bit more into the theme of Tapestry. I get excited about pushing one certain track for thematic reasons. I usually end up maybe around 200. I've seen people post scores of 400 plus, so I'm far from being competitive at Tapestry.
And I don't have a good excuse, but Jamie especially just likes to try new things every time too. So
I do. Jazz says, speaking of Wingspan, excited to see that it has now reached the iOS platform. It has, yeah. About a month ago, I think it was July 20th that it came out on iOS. Did you experiment with that version?
Yep.
You did?
Yep.
Yeah.
They sent it to me, and I played it, and it was actually really solid by the time I saw it.
Awesome. Did you play on an iPad or a tablet or a phone?
On the phone. It's pretty small on the phone.
I was thinking it'd be pretty small. Yeah. Is it easy to get it to zoom in on a card?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's one I don't know if I would play on a phone, but I'm glad it works. Kevin says, how do we get that sweet Stonemeyer clothing? This is actually one of the few shirts that we've authorized a third-party seller to make that has our name on it, because it is kind of a trademark name, but we work so closely with MeepleSource that MeepleSource is how you get this shirt. This
is a Stonemeyer Vineyard. It's a
shirt.
viticulture joke. Yes.
Viticulture joke, and it's established in 2012 because that's when we started the company. Coming up on 10 years soon. Oh, Miles, I like this question. Which St. Louis restaurant will you miss the most? You can name more than one if you have a few that you love.
Yeah, there's a bunch that Lindsay and I go to a lot. But not restaurant, Ted Drew's. It's really good. We eat at Achero a lot. I'm blanking right now. Juniper is another good one. All these places that Jamie no longer goes to because he's vegetarian, but...
A lot of them have something that's vegetarian, but it's not their focus. Yeah. Is there any... I feel like frozen custard is now something that you can get in Culver's has frozen custard.
It's different. It's going to be, even the local custard places are all very different, and so...
That's true.
Yeah. Are
there any specialties to Reno? Any foods that Reno is known for?
I don't know. Casinos that we're not going to go to.
Okay.
I can't. We'll find out.
We'll find out, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lee says, this is a tough question to answer on the spot, but well, maybe you know. What's your favorite board game?
Well, I'll start with favorite recent board game is Dune Imperium. Jamie really liked it recently too, and I love it. I'm a big Dune fan. But if we go a little bit further back, Pandemic, Viticulture, and A Feast for Odin. And I very purposely did not just pick one favorite board game because I don't do that very well.
As Joe was talking, I pulled up the list that he made last year, his top 10 list last year. Last year, his list, this is a video on our YouTube channel if you want to check it out, but he listed A Feast for Odin at number 1, Viticulture number 2, Pandemic Legacy, Glen Moore, and The King of Siam. Are you sticking with The King of Siam, or would you replace it with The King is Dead, 2nd edition?
I probably like Thailand better than England. Yeah. King of Siam, they're basically the same game, but King of Siam is really fun.
You also listed It's a Wonderful World, Newsfjord, Terraforming Mars, The Gallerist, and Sushi Roll. I miss Sushi Roll. You guys, I think, had that. You had the copy of Sushi Roll, don't you? That's a good game. Yeah. You should bring that tonight.
Okay.
Yeah. I know you don't want to speak poorly of the game, but is there any game, you may have just said one, is there any game that's jumped onto the top 10 list since, I guess Dune Imperium.
Dune Imperium, definitely. Yeah, that's the only one I can think of that's jumped on. I'm sure there are probably others, too.
And I'm actually grateful that Joe got excited about Dune Imperium because I knew nothing about Dune and I wasn't super excited about the game, and then I tried it, and you will see soon how far up my top 10 list it has climbed.
Oh, wow.
You know the answer to this. You've edited the video. but yeah, I love Dune Imperium too. I'm hoping they still release the movie this year. I know they bumped it back a year last year, but so far I think they are. Greg says, for Joe, I emailed Joe a couple of weeks ago about the signed Stonemaier cards being lost when they were shipped to Canada. Just to let you know, my cards showed up a few days ago. Oh, good.
Yep.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I always appreciate knowing when the loop is closed. If we try to fix something and you say it's arrived, I really love that. Thanks a lot.
And just to clarify for those of you who might hear that a little bit out of context, we don't ship from the U.S. to Canada, but we do ship certain things from the U.S. to our fulfillment center in Canada and then fulfill it from there. Greg, I'm happy to hear that as well. Mahir says, good morning, Jamie and Joe. As someone who has recently moved out of state, I would highly recommend Pack Rat as a cheaper option for pods. He says we had a great experience with them. Pack Rat.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'll look it up. We recently did a U-Haul pod. They call it something else. But then we have a lot more stuff to move, but this is just the initial stuff. Okay,
nice. Looks like Jens is joining us for the first time because of some certain timing he is able to join us. And thank you, Jens, for joining us for the first time. I appreciate that. He is Danish, along with our coworker Morten is also over there in Denmark. Chad says to Joe, what is your favorite Scythe faction? And while Joe thinks about this, let me just say for anyone who's joining us late, Joe is our Director of Communications. He's joining us for the first, hopefully not only time, but first time on video today. So feel free to ask him anything, even favorite faction questions. You have an answer for that one?
I'm probably going to just pick the easy one, Rosviet. It's I really enjoy the freedom, but they're all really fun.
Roosevelt is the one where you can choose you don't have to choose a different section of the player mat every time you take a turn. So you do have a little more freedom in that one. That's the one I usually give to new players because it gives them that freedom of choice a little bit. If I'm teaching.
Again, I'm not very good at board games, so I usually lose. It's not like it's a very good advantage, but...
I know you've seen a lot of posts in the Scythe Facebook group from people who are very good at Scythe. Has there been anything that's really impressed you or that you learned from those posts?
There's a part of Scythe that's about action memorizing, like the different sequencing. And I'm a little bit more of a seat of the pants kind of person and really enjoy just making a tactical decision in the moment. So I really admire those people who are willing to go that extra step and plan so far ahead.
Yeah. Par says, from Sweden, he says, have you tried any John Clare games with the card crafting system? If so, what do you think about it? Maybe do you have one that you really enjoy? Have you played those games?
I don't think so.
So this is be games like, he's talking about the card sleeving mechanism.
Oh yeah, I haven't played those.
What's the most recent one? Mystic Vale is the most well-known one. There's a trick-taking one. There's Edge of Darkness, which is on Kickstarter now. Mm-hmm. There's one other one. The one that I'm forgetting is my favorite, I think. What am I forgetting? What's the one in between? And the comments can help out with this. Although I did enjoy Mystic Vale, the trick-taking one was unique. So you haven't played any of them?
No, I just
No?
yeah, I haven't been avoiding them. I just haven't seen them.
I think it is cool. I'm impressed that he found a way to prototype it efficiently because I don't think there's an easy way to print on clear paper. So I'd be curious to learn more from him about how he prototypes that. Yoke says, are you considering creating a campaign spanning over time for viticulture? That's a great question. I'm hesitant to answer because I don't want to spoil anything. Not to say that the expansion for viticulture is a campaign expansion, but I don't want to spoil anything about that. But thank you for asking about it. I will say that in the original Tuscany, and I think it's online as well, the Tuscany rulebook is online, there is a slight campaign format to introduce you to different modules in Tuscany. So there is a bit of a campaign that already exists. There's also a solo campaign in viticulture. Am I missing anything?
It may take some searching, but Morton actually had one as well, a campaign that was time-based,
Okay.
different years.
That's right.
But it wasn't finished. He just needs people to be interested in it. So if you search it, find it, comment it, maybe he'll work on it.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Yeah, Morton does pay attention to those posts, especially on Board Game Geek. Cynthia from Meeple Source, who makes the shirt that Joe is wearing, is joining us, and she says some people have very particular ways of filling the dishwasher. Most importantly, knives pointed up or down. For me, it's definitely down because I don't want to stab myself as I'm picking up the knives. What do you do?
Always down.
Always down. Yeah. I think as a rock climber, you have to be a little extra aware of your hands. Like you don't want to injure your hands.
Yeah.
Kevin also says he plays Wingspan on his phone and it works great there. Yoke says, once you've released a new title, how often do you honestly bring it back to the table again? My answer is whenever anyone asks to play the game, I am happy to play. I never want to force one of our games upon, especially my friends. I don't want to say, okay, play this game that I know I love because I worked on it. But if they bring it up, I am always happy to play. Would your answer very?
No. I play. I would love to force people to play Stonemaier games, but Jamie is definitely that way. Like he won't suggest it unless other people do, which is fun.
I sometimes, unfortunately, so I have a separate shelf for Stonemaier games, and oftentimes, there are times where I'm like, okay, I really need a 6-player game, and I'll forget that I have a whole shelf full of 6-player games that we publish because I'm looking at my other shelves, just purely based on visual. Scott says, is there a game you love but unfortunately doesn't hit the mark with your regular game group? Have you had any games like that you really loved and just couldn't get to the table?
You know, when I first got Root from Kickstarter, I really couldn't find a lot of people that loved it. Now we have a particular friend of ours, Dave, who brings it almost every time, or at least he used to before the pandemic.
That's true.
But yeah, Zaya is another one. I forget if you pronounce it Zia or Zaya. That I really enjoy, and it's just not quite the game that a lot of my friends enjoy.
I'm trying to think if there's any others. You guys can actually see my shelf a little bit here for once because of the angle. I'm trying to see if there's anything over there that I'm always excited to play that no one else really is. Nothing really jumps out. I think what ends up happening for me, actually no, I'll name one because a lot of my games over the last year have been played with Megan, 2-player, and she did not enjoy Dice Throne. I really, really love Dice Throne. But Megan just didn't get into it, and I have found that with Megan and even my gaming group, my preferences are impacted by the people around me because I want everyone to be having fun. So if everyone else isn't having fun, I stop having fun as well. And so again, that's one example of a game that I really love that I ended up giving away because I couldn't get it to the table. But it is still a wonderful game. I loved it. Have you played Dice Throne?
No, I have not.
Yeah. Chad says, Star Wars or Star Trek? Choose carefully.
I'm worried about answering this question, but Star Wars, definitely.
I'm in that same boat as well. Though I have enjoyed the newer Star Trek movies. Because they just feel more modern.
I watched all of Next Generation, all of Deep Space Nine. I still really enjoy Star Trek.
Yeah. I have to go through the old episodes a little bit. There was, I think, one of these live casts, I asked people what their favorite episode was on. It's the next Generation is the one that's seen as the best, right?
Or Deep Space Nine. Yeah, who knows? Okay, yeah. It's a dangerous question too.
But I have a list of episodes that I need to watch through there. Justin says, now that you've released Red Rising based off a previous IP, do you have any continued interest in developing games based off other IPs? If you could do your dream IP, what would it be? I mean, my dream IP is Red Rising, and so we got to do that. I don't have any other IPs that I'm actively targeting right now. It would have to be a really special case, I think, because it's an immense amount of time and energy and resources to create any game. So I have to really love that IP to go into it. Joe, though, I'm curious about what Joe's answer might be here. Is there an IP that you would grab if you had that power to grab an IP?
Yeah, I don't have the power necessarily to design games, so this means almost nothing. But I just think of novels that I've really enjoyed, and Seven Eves. The process of getting off Earth and then maybe surviving as a species afterwards is something that really captures my imagination. That could be a cool game, but there's so many ways it could go. Who knows?
Really great book. That's a Neil Stephenson book. Yeah, that's one that I wouldn't mind seeing on the screen in some way. Probably a miniseries, maybe.
A miniseries. It's so epic that it'd be.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I want to say more about it, but I don't want to spoil anything because it does some big things that I did not expect. Yeah. I know I just missed a question. I'm so sorry. Facebook's doing that thing where it scrolls past questions. So if I miss a question, feel free to ask. I'm not avoiding the question. Christian says, a good friend of mine is doing a board game challenge this year to play Tapestry 365 times.
Wow.
What do you think of that, and what is the most interesting challenge you've set for yourself? Do you ever do those gaming challenges? Do you ever set?
No.
Yeah.
We typically, I like to play everything that I own. That's sort of my own challenge. I don't like a shelf of opportunity. No. But other than that, no.
And I also have not really done any of those challenges. I typically I play either something that I want to learn from and talk about, or something that I really love and want to play repeatedly. I think the question that I missed was actually about Dune. They asked, "Are you excited about any of the other Dune games that have come out or have or are coming out?"
There's a detective-style Dune game that I pre-ordered. There's a Dune RPG that I have not. I'm not as interested in role-playing games. I'm not sure if there's another game. If there is, let me know.
I thought there was one more, but I can't remember the name of it. If anyone wants to list the different Dune games, we can check them off. Alex says Dead Reckoning is the newest one. Oh, okay, he's talking about card crafting game. Custom Heroes is the trick-taking one I was referring to. Dead Reckoning is a pirate game that was on Kickstarter with that card crafting system. It's a cool system. Tim says, what did you think about your second play of Nemesis? I still need to get it back to the table. So Joe was in on the first play of Nemesis.
It was a lot of fun. It was cinematic. It was everything that you would want a alien but not alien game to be.
I think that sums up my impression of it too. And I had fun getting it back to the table. It was definitely a shorter play the second time because we weren't kind of stumbling through the rules. There were two of us that knew the rules pretty well at that point. And I had a lot of fun with it. The story was very different the second time. And I will be talking about it soon on my emergent narrative video coming out a little bit later in September. What was my video this past weekend? Dexterity games. Oh yeah, I did a video about dexterity games that disc golfers might enjoy. Really, it was my excuse to do a top 10 dexterity game video with the context of disc golfing. Do you have a favorite or a dexterity game that you enjoy? You get excited about?
I can't think of any. Yeah. I'm not a big dexterity game. Rock climbing?
Rock climbing is a great dexterity game, yeah. Cynthia says, have either of us played the King's Guild? She says she played it last night on Board Game Arena and really enjoyed it. Have you played the King's Guild?
No.
I think I've heard of that one.
I haven't heard of it.
I'll have to try that one on Board Game Arena. Cynthia, no, I haven't played it. Cameron is joining us today from the Board Game Bulletin. Thanks for dropping by, Cameron. James says, Joe, what is a way that you have impacted a Stonemaier game that you're particularly proud of? Could be rules, mechanisms, components. I have an answer for this after Joe answers.
The first time that Jamie sent me a rulebook, and it was the Pendulum rulebook, there were a couple things that I feel like I really added in there that I was really immensely proud of. Probably overly proud of, because no one noticed it because they weren't missing, which is another way of saying that it might have been crucial. Who knows?
And that is essentially my same answer. That bringing Joe. So Joe is whenever we get a pre-production copy or a mass production copy, especially the pre-production copy stage, Joe reviews it in detail, thinking about it from the gamer perspective, someone who maybe is not quite as close to the game as me, and that is super helpful in clarifying just like how things go in the box or how the certain elements of the rules making sense for the player. And we've added even more to the proofreading and oversight process since then, but Joe was at the root of that and has made a huge difference, I think, in our games. Yeah. Cameron says, have you looked at or watched Shingama Dune on Apple TV? I've seen that promoted on Apple TV, but I haven't watched it
yet.
Yeah. Joe did get me into For All Mankind, which I'm still really enjoying. We're almost done with season 2. That's on Apple TV as well. Really enjoyed that. And even more, what's your favorite Apple TV show, Joe?
The morning show.
Oh, the morning. Oh, yeah, that's right. I was thinking of a different answer.
I really liked it. What was the other answer?
No, I know you love it. Yeah, the Ted Lasso.
Oh, Ted. Oh, I forgot about that one too. There's too many good ones.
Yeah. The morning show was really good, and they have a second season of that. I didn't know they were going to do more.
It's coming.
Coming soon. Yeah. Speaking of Ted Lasso, the Premier League, Gerald says, "What team will win the Premier League this year?" Do you know anything about the Premier League other than Ted Lasso? No. I mean, the money is on Man City. I like picking the underdog. So if you really want to potentially win a lot of money, pick one of those new teams that came up from relegation last year. There's one team that I've never even heard of because they have this relegation system where teams that this could Ted Lasso.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Don't want to spoil that, but yeah. John says, with regards to the IP question, do you have a lawyer for that? We do have a trademark intellectual property lawyer. Yes. Yeah. That's Scott. Scott does a wonderful job with that. Lindsay's here. Lindsay would be all about a Seven Eves campaign game, apparently. I can see that working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Lee says, is there any game mechanism that you would try out more, or that I'd like to see more of? I mean, there's certain game mechanisms that I'm always excited to see a twist on, like deck building. I like to see twist on deck building and worker placement. I like to see twist on that. But those are very popular mechanisms. Is there any mechanism that you really love that you are always excited to see or that you like to see twist on?
I can't. I never get tired of worker placement. But
yeah.
Yeah.
So you love Pandemic,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of cooperative games have been influenced by Pandemic, like
mm-hmm.
the event deck system, the idea of something bad happening and then spreading out. Like there are a lot of little games that do that. Has there been any? Like, do you like that mechanism beyond Pandemic, or do you just mainly like the Pandemic version of it?
I mainly like the Pandemic version, but also all Pandemic versions of it.
The
Fall of Rome, where they're barbarians. There's one where there's floods.
The Netherlands. That's in the Netherlands, I think? Yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Rising Tide is what it's
Rising Tide, yeah. We were talking about Dune games. Alex says there's an upcoming Dune game similar to the Resistance and Hidden Role games. Okay.
That's cool.
Cool. Samuel says, I just realized that's a bookshelf of cat food and not stacks of mini game trays. That is correct. Yes, that is the wet food center for Biddy back there. Chad is repeating the question. Again, Facebook sometimes scrolls past these questions. I missed them. I'm sorry about that, but Chad is repeating it. Thank you, Chad. He says, Joe, are you into sci-fi or fantasy books? Any favorites beyond Seven Eves, which you mentioned a few minutes ago, which is sci-fi?
Sci-fi definitely first, though I've really been enjoying some Brandon Sanderson fantasy books recently. I really enjoy the what if part of sci-fi, and I feel like fantasy doesn't quite go that same direction. Other favorites of sci-fi, Seven Eves, Dune, the first 15 Lives of Harry August. I just recently really enjoyed, Jamie suggested it, a book of short stories, Exhalation, was really good.
I just read a book called The 22 Deaths of Evelyn of Madison May, which if you like the 15 Lives, I recommend that one too. 22 Deaths. Sounds morbid. It's not. It is a little dark, but it's not that morbid. And speaking of Brandon Sanderson, I wanted to ask, Megan right now is reading his young adult sci-fi series. I'm forgetting the name of it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Young adult sci-fi series. I'll pull it up on... Skyward. Yeah, have you read the Skyward series? No. Megan said you really enjoyed it, right, Megan?
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd recommend that too. Let's see. Tim says Dune Betrayal. Okay, yeah, it threw me off when they announced Dune Betrayal because I thought, okay, this is Betrayal House on the Hill with Dune, but that is not it, apparently. I think it's a social deduction.
Hidden role.
Yeah. They also have a different version of the original Dune game aimed for 2 to 4 players. Now, you have the original Dune game, don't you? Or
Yeah.
some version of it? Yeah. Let's see. Scrolling through, looking at it. Let's see, a few other topics. I mentioned that Rolling Realms, a bunch of playthroughs came out recently. The Watch It Play video came out the other day. And I've been working on a lot of proofreading stuff lately at Stonemaier Games. Blog topics have been campaign. I did a blog about campaign games where I polled ambassadors and just polled the general public. There's a separate poll on that post about campaign games, and a post about getting postcards to remind me of upcoming campaigns, which a campaign called Legends Academy did that I thought was really cool. Did you happen to see the campaign? I know you've been so busy, but did you see the campaign games post? What are your thoughts on campaign games right now?
It's super hard because campaigns have to be good at 2 players, which Pandemic Legacy tends to be.
Yeah.
For Lindsay and I to really get into it.
So you look at the 2-player count as a crucial thing when you consider campaign games.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting to see the player count feedback on that. I thought almost half of the people would say that. It looked like the 2 to 4 was the sweet spot for covering most people. Like 80% of people want campaign games to play between 2 and 4 players. And actually, the biggest difference between the poll from our ambassadors and the general public was on that question related to solo play, which surprised me. I would have thought with solo modes in all of our games that we would have lots of people that follow us that want solo campaign games. But I think it was only like 8% of our ambassadors said that they primarily play campaign games solo, whereas 20% of general readers said they play campaign games solo. Greg says, oh no, here we go. Scott says, have you seen anything on Soulforge Fusion? New game by Richard Garfield and Justin Gary. I've seen a little bit about this. Have you seen this?
No.
It's the closest analog is to Keyforge, where it's a uniquely printed game where you put 2 decks together. So you're not only getting like 2 uniquely printed decks, but you're also combining them together into a...
Like Jumpstart.
A little bit like Magic Jumpstart.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great comparison. And Richard Garfield, I don't think he was behind Jumpstart, but he was the creator of Magic. Yeah, I'm very curious about it, Scott. I've seen some ads for it, but I don't think it will come out for a while. I think they're doing a Kickstarter for it soon. And I'll probably back it. I'm curious about what they do with it. I love the idea of uniquely printed games. Have you played Keyforge at all?
Yep, a little bit.
Greg says, have you thought of putting out a monthly What I'm Reading newsletter? He says, I haven't read Red Rising yet, but it's on my growing reading list. Seeing how you are Dune fans, I'm also curious to know what books I'm missing out on. We actually do have something that we recently added to the Stonemaier Games website that will update probably quarterly. Maybe I should update it soon, because I go through a lot of books and movies. But if you look on our website, let me see where it is. I think it's under About, and go down to Stuff We Love. I don't know if it'll show up on the mobile version, but if you're on your computer, go to About and Stuff We Love. And you can see stuff that we are enjoying right now. And it's essentially what you're asking for here. It shows... If we want to, I guess it doesn't show for all of us what we're reading. No, you show it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's basically whatever we want to share that we're enjoying right now. When Joe answered it a month or so ago, he mentioned The Rhythm of War and The Morning Show, which we mentioned a few minutes ago. At the time, I was reading Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, which I really enjoyed. But yeah, that's the place to go if you want to check that out. I'll leave that up so I can maybe update my stuff after this post. Mario says, hello from Puerto Rico and the Gaming Dragons channel. Awesome. I'm not familiar with that channel, but thank you for mentioning it. Have you considered making a game about the Caribbean? I don't think I've thought about that region specifically in terms of game design. That's not typically my approach. But are there any great games in the Caribbean that you can think of? There's Puerto Rico.
Maybe you should let us know.
Yeah, Mario, are there any games that you really enjoy set in the Caribbean that you really enjoy? Let us know in the comments. John says, with regards to intellectual property, may we know who your lawyer is? Yeah, our lawyer is Scott. He works at a company called Middleton Routelier. Scott has appeared, like if you look at the legal section of my Kickstarter lesson post, I think he did a guest post or maybe an interview at one point. So you can see his information there. You can also email me. If you're looking for an IP lawyer, I'm happy to connect you with Scott because he's been really, really great for us. Gerald links to the it's from Portal Games.
I
Dune
think
House
that's the one
Secrets.
that's like detective, not like Resistance.
Yes,
I think so, and I think I have that one pre-ordered.
cool. Tim says, any movement on an official Frogmouth mini expansion for Wingspan? I can definitely say that we aren't making anything specific for Frogmouth, but I talked to Elizabeth about it, and Elizabeth steers whatever we do with promos, whatever we do with expansions, and so from my conversation with her, that isn't something that I think we will pursue. But I think you will find Frogmouth birds appear in other or actual like official expansions, different continents, because they are not only in Oceania, they do appear in some other continents as well. Anything you want to add to that from what you've seen in the Facebook group?
No.
Ivan says, what are your thoughts on Hyperion? I think that would be a great IP for board games. This is Hyperion by Dan, I want to say Dan Stevens. One of my favorite sci-fi novels of all time, sci-fi series. It's incredible. Have you read it?
No, I haven't.
It's a 4-book series that I'm aware of. Maybe there are more books. But Ivan, I agree. It has some of the most iconic, memorable scenes in any sci-fi novel series that I've read. A great recommendation. Glad you mentioned that here. Julia says, I've always loved Pinochle, so trick-taking games have a place in my heart. What's your favorite trick-taking game? I don't know if I've done a video on trick-taking games. It isn't a genre that I generally gravitate towards. Can you think of any that you really enjoy?
Easy answer for me is Fox in the Forest.
Fox in the Forest?
Really good 2-player version.
I really enjoyed the duet version of that. Do you have a preference between the cooperative and the competitive?
The competitive.
Competitive?
I like the competitive.
I think I might lean towards the cooperative a little bit. Had a nice push and pull. So, Julia, I don't know if I'll say this as my official answer, but I did enjoy. I guess both of us enjoyed Fox in the Forest, just different versions of it. I also like. There are a few trick-taking games that have the hands of cards that you can't see, like Picoco game on my shelf over there, and Vamp on the Batwalk. Both are games in that style where you can't see your own hand of cards, and I just like that twist on it. I think that's a unique approach to take.
And The Crew, of course.
The Crew, yes. Oh, yeah. I really do enjoy The Crew. That might be my top pick. Christy says, in anticipation of Rolling Realms, me and my husband played the digital version for the first time. We really love it. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, we've intentionally not updated the digital version because I kind of wanted to. The Rolling Realms was originally just a print and play version, and that print and play version was available digitally. It still is, and it still will continue to be. But the game has changed a little bit since then. The realms have changed, better art, better graphic design, things like that. And so that's a great way to test out the game and try it to see if you like it. There will also be a Tabletopia version coming up when we release the game, the final version. Lee says, Joe, do you like to make and design games?
No, I perhaps one day, but I have not attempted that yet.
Chad says, I like how Forbidden Island and Forbidden Desert feel like Pandemic. Do you have a favorite pick in that series, the Forbidden series?
Probably Desert. I've played all of those. We really gravitate more towards Pandemic, but I agree that that's the same system, but it feels way different.
I really enjoyed Desert quite a bit. George says that Top Shelf Gamer is preparing a Kickstarter in October for the Realistic Resources with some brand new box covers, but similar to the original Stonemaier Kickstarter ones. Have you seen them? Yeah. We have a great, I wouldn't quite say partnership now, but we are excited because they bought our Realistic Resource brand, but we are excited for them to do awesome things with the Realistic Resources that we originally funded on Kickstarter years ago. And I'm really excited to see what they do with that. I'm glad they're bringing back the box format. It's a nice way to keep resources on your shelf in those boxes. So I'm excited to see what they do with it. Did you see that in the Realistic Resource group? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they posted about that the other day. Yeah, I'm excited to see what they do with it, George. Parr says, what Stonemaier games do you think work really well at 2 players? Well, Joe, why don't you throw out an answer here, and I'll give my global answer to it if you want.
Yeah, my answer is going to be a lot like Jamie's, except that the one that we've played the most at 2 players is Viticulture and Tuscany. I think it's an amazing 2-player game.
And obviously, I think we're both pretty biased here because we work for similar games. I have had a hand in designing many of these games, but I will say that a lot of the playtesting that I've done, especially before Joe and Alex came on board, was two-player. And so while I designed these games and blind playtested for them to be scaled up, and I did some local playtesting for higher player counts, so much of the focus of these games is to make sure they work really well for couples or roommates. They work well at two players. So I am the most biased person on the planet to ask this, but I'm saying that all of our games, I think, are designed for two-player count, with the sole exception of Between Two Cities and Between Two Castles, which are primarily designed for 3+, but they have really solid two-player and now solo variants as well. So, Par, I don't have a great answer for you to help narrow it down there, but if there's a few, if you're considering, like, maybe if you can throw out two games of ours that you're considering trying or getting, I can maybe say which two-player experience I enjoy a little bit more. Maybe Joe can answer that as well. We have a few more minutes here. Let's see if we have any other questions that we can answer. Raul says, do you have any news regarding digital side expansions? Yeah, that is a tough one for us to answer because it is something that we don't handle. Our Side Digital is licensed to another company called the Knights of Unity, who work with Asmodee Digital for Side Digital. And behind the scenes, I have been talking with them to encourage them to get expansion content out there, but there's some roadblocks and barriers in the way of them doing that. And so currently there's nothing in the works, but I want there to be, and we're working through that. So hopefully there will be in the future, but it'll be a little while, maybe as much as a year and a half, I think, unfortunately, before we see any expansion content there. Tim also seems to like The Crew. Samuel says, have you read the Rieria Revelations by Michael Sullivan?
Mm-mm.
I read maybe 4 of them. This is actually a weird series because I really enjoy Michael. Michael is really cool. He actually does Kickstarters and he reads our Kickstarter blog. And I've read like 5 of these books, and it was one of these series where he had a trilogy and then a prequel trilogy. Awesome books. And he released book 5, and at the end of book 5, he said instead of doing book 6, I'm splitting it into a trilogy. And it really deterred me from continuing the series. Because it was like I was ready for closure on the series, and then to find out there was another trilogy. It was one of those things where I probably should have been excited about it, but it had an odd effect. I don't know if you've ever experienced that with this series or a game where you were like, okay, this is the final episode, this is the final book, and there were actually a bunch more. Does that ever happen?
Well, a little bit different. Sometimes I'm daunted just by the length of the series, and I don't want to start it.
Yeah.
But sometimes if I'm in the middle, I'm committed. So.
You're in. That was actually what you just said was my hesitation to get into the Wheel of Time series. Yeah. So how am I going to read, 14, 15 books? And I read half of them. Ended up reading the summaries for a bunch of the middle ones. And that was a series that I talked to you about a little bit too, because did you read them from start to finish?
I read
eventually?
From start to finish, and I told you at the time I'm not sure if I can recommend it, but it was good.
And our shared love of Brandon Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson finished the series with a really solid finish, I thought.
Those were my first Brandon Sanderson novels.
Actually. Really? Yeah, okay. Nice. Chris says, have you read the Otherland series by Tad Williams?
Mm-mm.
I have not, no. Lots of book recommendations here. Julia asked about Battle Mage by Peter Flannery. I've also not read that one.
No.
Mm-hmm. Scott enjoys the trick-taking game Gorus Maximus. I have played that once and enjoyed it. And once is not a slight on the game. I just don't play a lot of trick-taking games. Have you played Gorus Maximus?
Yeah, we played it together, I think. Yeah.
Here's Dune Betrayal. Cool. Julia says, Battle Mage is actually one of my favorite fantasy books, and my husband and I seem to like a lot of the same books. So okay, I'll write that one down. Should have been writing all these down. Battle Mage. What was the other one that we just got asked about? Battle Mage and Otherland.
Mm-hmm.
Mario's back to answer questions about Caribbean. Merchants and Marauders. Maracaibo, of course. Tobago, Jamaica, San Juan, and Puerto Rico. Do you have a favorite from that list?
I actually haven't played very many of those. I have a lot to put on my list.
I really enjoy Jamaica. I like racing games quite a bit, and Jamaica is. I think the art is beautiful in it. It's one of these games where if you never need to, but if you lay the cards out side by side, they form a long panorama. It's a really nice art direction there. Fun racing game. And Maracaibo I like too. Patrick says, do you ever find yourself purchasing or backing games on theme. I realized that I've been on a Mars and jungle kick recently. You ever experienced that?
I like sci-fi. I really almost bought Cryo just because I like the art and sci-fi, but didn't get around to it. It's a recent experience.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if... I mean, there are definitely themes that I get excited about, but I don't know if I've gone on a kick like that. That's an interesting way to think about it. JT jumps in here to say the Wheel of Time is huge. He says, I just committed to reading the first 7 Dune books ahead of the film's release. I also rewatched the 1984 film, which is even campier than I remember. I think Joe has a lot more experience with Dune than I do. I've just read the first book. Have you read that? Have you watched the movie? Have you read those other books?
Yeah, all of them. And really, you only need to read the first book. If you really love it, you can move on. But the first book stands alone, and you don't need to watch the 1984 film. Chad has been trying to get me to read a book called Dark Matter, which is on my list, but he's asking you, have you read Dark Matter? Is that the Crouch book?
Yes.
I think I have read it. Actually, Lindsay recommended it. I read it, yeah.
Okay.
It was very fast-paced. It was very, very easy read, for sure.
Cool. And Tim says, if you like Stephen King, I recommend Chasing the Boogeyman by Richard Chismar. He co-wrote Gwendy's Bottom Box with Stephen King. Oh, cool. Thank you for the recommendation. Actually, I have not, as much as I enjoy Stephen King's writing, I have not read a lot of his novels. I've read a few short stories. You read many of his books?
No, actually none.
Yeah. I am not much of definitely not a scary movie person, and I read books right before I go to bed, and so I think that's one of my deterrents. I don't want to have a nightmare based on a scary scene that I read from a Stephen King book. JT says about that 1984 film, but how many films include the British singer Sting as a comically overacting villain? No reaction to that, Joe.
I actually have the original Dune board game with Sting on the cover. After the movie released, they re-released that board game with Sting on there, and it's rather funny.
We're right at a little past 11 o'clock now, but I wanted to thank you all for joining us today, for asking Joe these questions. Thank you to Joe for going out of his way. He had to drive over here just for this video, and now he's going to drive back to his home office. So Joe, thanks for coming by.
Yeah, thank you everyone for having me and asking questions. I really enjoyed myself.
Awesome. All right, well, I hope you all have a great week. I will be back here without Joe, unfortunately, probably next Wednesday. I might be making a trip next week, so I might switch around the video time. But I will see you next week sometime on live stream. Take care and have a great week.